It was a big day, but it was also a crazy day. I mean, the U.S. equity markets were actually higher, but the big story is the major technical glitch here at the Nasdaq, in fact, that prompted the entire exchange to halt trading of all stocks for 3 hours in the middle of a busy day. Some of the biggest names in technology were affected. You probably know many of these names. But here's the problem. It's raising new questions about the strength of U.S. trading, specifically about electronic trading. Shraysi Tandon joins me now here in the studio. This is big. A lot of people are talking about it, and there's a lot of questions. Let me start with what the heck happened?
That is the million-dollar question, no pun intended. In fact, so the major issue here, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of tech argy-bargy, but basically the problem was with the stock exchange's SIP, which is their Securities Information Processor. It's a system that essentially disseminates quotes and prices. Now, at the start of the trading day today, or actually in the middle of the trading day, all the options that were traded on the Nasdaq were affected. As the day went on, we saw all the securities listed on the Nasdaq were affected. The Nasdaq is the U.S.'s second largest stock exchange operator. So we saw, you know, they have a market cap of $5.7 trillion. We saw some big tech names. You were just talking about them.
Okay, but no one lost any money, right?
That's the interesting thing, you know. I mean,
right? We're looking at all these stocks and different indexes. I mean, they weren't affected because the markets are actually higher. What about the fact that some people are saying, hey, wait a minute, this is not the first time this has happened, and this raises big questions about electronic trading, whether or not we trust computers ultimately?
You know, that's actually really true, because this is not just about the outage today. In fact, this has happened several times over many years. In fact, we've got a very interesting timeline for you that I want to pull up and show our viewers. So back in May 2010, we had something called the flash crash, in which the Dow plummeted by 1,000 points. It was the largest one-day point drop that we saw. Then back in May 2012, we saw, everyone knew the Facebook's IPO. You know, Nasdaq had suffered a malfunction, and Facebook actually lost tens of millions of dollars in trade. Facebook then decided to sue Nasdaq for $10 million. Then also in 2012, in August, we saw Knight Capital experience some technical glitches, not at the Nasdaq this time, but at the NYSE, that's the New York Stock Exchange. This was tremendous, Phil, because the Knight Capital, the glitches that they experienced were so severe that trading snafu almost pushed the company into bankruptcy. Then, most recently, we saw what happened with Goldman Sachs a few days ago, just on Tuesday, both at the New York Stock Exchange and here at the Nasdaq. We saw that Goldman Sachs had some erroneous trades that affected their ETFs as well as their options. You trade on the Nasdaq.
Look. I don't want to talk about my poor record of trading, but what I do want to ask is, I don't want to put you on the spot either, but why should we, you know, this is a question a lot of people are asking. Why should we as investors trust what's happening on the Nasdaq in terms of electronic trading? Because we don't know what happens. You put in orders, you put in buy orders, your broker, your banker does all this, and this is a lot of people's retirement money.
That's
and
right.
for half a day, they couldn't get access to what was going on.
That was the big problem. Brokers were simply unable to execute customer orders because of this trading snafu.
So you could not buy and you could not sell.
You couldn't do anything. The markets were essentially paralyzed for 3 hours of today. And in fact, you know, the Nasdaq, it's a very, some of the companies that trade on the Nasdaq are some heavily traded companies across the U.S., such as Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Apple. These are very big companies. But back to your questions, the reason why investors keep coming back, and it's probably why you're also likely to continue trading on the Nasdaq, is because equity markets have been doing really well. Interest rates are low. And so therefore, you know, investors decide, hey, it's a minor snafu. It will be taken care of. We have regulators. We have the stock exchange. Continuously ensuring everyone that this is an electronic problem. It's out of our hands. We will look at it. We will try to fix it.
So we still haven't, though, and perhaps we're not the right people to answer this question, but the Nasdaq did release a statement essentially saying they're not sure what happened. Is that a problem, that a problem occurred and they still don't know what happened?
You know, over the course of, I'm sure tomorrow, we're going to see more details coming out as to what exactly went wrong here. What kind of damage did this really cause? We're also going to see, you know, what steps are going to be taken now to rectify this and to make sure. But at the end of the day, this is it. You know, our lives are so dependent on technology. And as we continue to grow as a global financial market, this is actually, it's funny because it actually coincides with the growth of the global financial markets that we do experience these electronic. And you know what, Phil? Another point, it didn't just affect us here in the US. In fact, even Chinese companies were affected, the likes of Baidu and Sina, they were affected as well.
There was also some chatter when this event first occurred. And look, and this is unfortunately the world that we live in, is when something like this happens, people ask the question, was it terrorism? Now, the statements that have been released says that it's not terrorism related. It's strictly due to the malfunction of the electronic trading system. But at the same time, they haven't said for sure that with 100% certainty that something from the outside, whether it's a virus, you know these computer viruses, it can happen and it gets into the system.
That's right.
Is the system safe?
I mean, the rumor mill will always work over time. You know, we've had issues with security issues in the U.S. We've had issues with whether it's hacking or so-called cyber terrorism. But at the end of the day, what we've seen over the last few years is that malfunctions happen in technology. I'm sure when you go home and you try to turn on your computer, it doesn't work. That's what happened here at the Nasdaq pretty much today, Phil.
I've given up trying to turn on the computer.
Don't give up trading, though. The Nasdaq does assure you it will be back on track tomorrow.
Let's